Hi, good evening, everyone. Hi, Vineet.
Hi, Prakhar.
Good to see our educators joining. We already have 43. Excellent. Over to you, Vineet. Vineet, you can begin. Yeah.
But Prakhar, I'm not in the spotlight.
Yeah, you can start talking.
Okay. Hello, good evening to all. My name is Vineet, and I am part of the academic consulting team of Educational Initiatives. I started my career as a software engineer with Tata Consultancy Services, and I switched to education post 3 years because I strongly believe that education has a true power to empower students and bring it the generational shift, enabling social mobility. I joined Teach for India, uh, and I was working as a fellow. I was teaching around 100 students, 9th and 10th graders, maths and science. It was an exciting journey. And post that, took up some other assignments also. And I joined Education Initiatives as academic consultant. And yeah, that's a brief about myself. Welcome you all to the webinar, Unlocking Learning through Open Book Assessments. Thank you all for joining. And yeah, let's start. Okay. So the buzzword is open book assessments for all, right? So we all know that everywhere we are talking about open book assessments in media, in news channels, in multiple kinds of social media, even in schools, uh, principals, everybody is talking about open book assessments. So let me just pause here, and I want you all to think for a moment about open book assessments and type down one word that comes to your mind about open book assessments. You can use the Q&A window for that. Okay, great to see some of the responses.
Can you repeat your question, Vineet, while I see some interesting responses? So basically, you are saying, what's the first thought which comes to our mind when we talk about open book assessments?
Yes, exactly.
First
What is
words?
the what is the one thing that comes to your mind when you talk about open book assessments?
Yeah. Some of the teachers might be new to this platform. So what you see at the bottom of the screen is a Q&A. You can type your comments there and we'll get to see all of you.
Sure, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Thank you,
Thank
brother.
you.
Okay, so I can see some of the very enthusiastic teachers typing here, reducing memorization power, uh, critical thinking questions, open book, find out answers from during exams. Thank you. Thank you all for sharing such wonderful responses. Please keep it coming. We will let your thoughts flow. And even if you have any queries, concerns, any particular perspectives you would like to share, please post it in the Q&A, that it will make it more encouraging for us to go about understanding what your thoughts are on the same. Yeah. It removes rote learning. Wonderful, sir. Yeah. I think we can start. Prakhar, can you please share that screen?
Yeah, you will be sharing your slides, Vineet. I will be sharing the my part. Yeah,
Okay, okay.
yeah. I think that you will be more comfortable. While I am interesting problem solving, complicated application type questions, self-analyzing. I think everyone is saying removing rote learning. But I think we'll try to elicit some of these points as part of the interaction today.
So when we talk about open book assessments, as I said, we hear multiple perspectives, right? As many of you actually typed, right? Rote-based memory. How do the students think? How do they come across different kinds of skill sets, etc. So how are we going to proceed with that? So as many of you told, what is about open book assessment? So some of you mentioned rote learn memory to avoid some kind of based on textbooks. So as all of you pointed out, open book assessments is nothing but a application of and synthesis of the concept which they have already studied. So students will have access to reference material, textbooks, and learning materials, and they need to apply the concept and try and solve the question that is provided to them. So here, along with the conceptual understanding, they also need to apply their higher order thinking skills, which is coming into play. So what do we mean by higher order thinking skills? We all know that critical thinking can be a higher order thinking skill. It can be a logical reasoning skill, which is also coming into play. So students need to apply that kind of skills to solve the question. Also, open book assessment provides a way to bring about that shift, which CBSE is also trying to bring in with respect to competency-based questions, right? So that open book assessment is also in line with that. So now, if you can see some of the questions here, if you can take next 1 or 2 minutes to just scan these questions and try and tell me if these questions can be an open book assessment question or not. You can type it down in the Q&A. So we have put together different questions from math, science, and social science of different grades. And as you would have observed, each of this question tests recall information kind of strategy to solve the question. So basically, the question is, if the student is able to score a particular answer correctly, that means they know a particular fact or a formula which they have studied previously. So that is what we are trying to test here in this type of question, right? So definitely this cannot be brought in the category of open book assessments, as we saw in the previous slide, because this is nowhere trying to test the higher order thinking skills of the student. Okay. Yes, definitely it is coming into play different kinds of skills. But again, now when we talk about open book assessments, it's a kind of higher order thinking skills that is going to come. Let us see how that plays out. Yeah. So here, please take next 2 minutes to go through the question given here. I hope all of you got a chance to go through the question. So this question is designed to test the learning outcome for a grade 7 science topic called heat transfer. And the question is testing the learning outcome that students will be able to distinguish good conductors and bad conductors of heat. Now, is this a direct recall kind of question? No, the situation here given here is enabling the student to read and analyze the given context here. The context given is of a problem that a school cafeteria is facing, right? So a particular problem they have having at real time. So how are they going to solve this question? So student needs to investigate the particular different kinds of solutions which is given here, different kinds of options that is coming up. By discussing in teams, they need to apply the concept of heat transfer and try and provide a solution to the problem which is being discussed here, right? So again, they need to apply the concept here and then come up with a solution. So now how is it going to be different from the question which we saw previously? Here the students are able to apply the concept and they are able to relate to a real-time situation. They're getting an opportunity to solve a real-time problem which they're encountering in their day-to-day life and activity, in their school, in their cafeteria, right? So they're able to apply the concept and then they're able to solve this question as a team. So students require higher order thinking skills of critical thinking, reasoning, analytical ability. Even they need to have skills like collaboration because they're working as a team to solve this question. And also they need to be creative to come up with the different solutions. So those are the different higher order skills that will be coming into play. Now the next question would be, how would we evaluate this? Right? So usually if we get the correct answer, we can evaluate them. But now we need to evaluate them on multiple parameters. So multiple parameters can be problem solving, scientific reasoning, like understanding of scientific concept, and then solution and communication. So what we can see here is there is a 30% weightage for the solution, but 70% weightage to how they have thought through the answer, how they have arrived at a particular answer. So this is mostly evidence-based approach which the student is using to solve the solution, come up with the solution. So this gives the student the chance to develop their skills such as critical thinking and push towards understanding subject at a zoomed out level, right? So this is one way we can come up with an open book assessment kind of question, right? Yeah. So I take a pause here. Now I invite my colleague Prakhar to take up the stage. And Prakhar has been with EI for almost a decade, whether it's been the role of leading the academic consulting team or as part of asset team. I know him who is someone very deeply interested in how students learn and teachers think. Prakhar, you have always been very excited about the idea of open book assessments. And I know that you have been working closely with some of the schools to support the asset as open book assessment. Can you share your perspective on the same, and what are some of the things that can be adopted by the teachers to explore the world of open book assessments? Over to you, Prakhar.
Hey, Vinny, thank you. And thank you for highlighting some of the points. Before we begin, I just wanted a heads up from some people. If they're able to look at your presentation, I heard from some people that they were not able to look at your presentations. I am able to see the presentation.
Okay.
So Vinny, can you unshare your screen and let me share my screen? I'll just quickly share my screen. And before I do that, I'll tell you to all the teachers, thank you once again for joining us. It's a difficult topic. While we were both, Vineet and I, were mulling over this idea on what do we talk? Because there's a lot of information available, which is not exclusive, which is not, what do you call? There are a lot of facts or there are a lot of ideas upon open book exams, but there is lack of clarity. And since we don't represent board, so I don't want this top webinar onto logistics of things. So we thought we will talk about the larger points and we will look at some of the ideas in terms of what is open book exams. I will try and show you some questions. We'll try and discuss some of these questions and try and solve some of these questions today. in the open book simulation mode. First, let me solve for the first problem. And if people can let me know if my screen is visible, just give me a second. See if my screen is visible. Tada. Do you see a blank screen? Something shared? If some people can message and let me know. Yes, thank you. So some of you. Others who are still not able to witness the screen, look at the screen, I request if you can refresh and maybe join back. Yeah. So again, I'll start with another question which Vineet shared and I'll pause here. And I wanted to capture what Vineet is asking and I'll try to unfold this for all of us because this is one of the most important part. So I think all of you know, would be aware that CBSE has tried as a pilot of open book exam earlier also. This is not the first time we are talking about open book assessments. It's not only about CBSE. There are people who have globally tried, tested, succeeded in some part, failed, still mulling over this idea. So it's a very new idea, but I'll tell you where it fails. There are multiple levels it can fail, but I think it's one of the very strong ideas. But let's start with what Vineet asked. Do you think this question can go as part of open book exams, open book assessments? I'll pause here to, yeah, welcome. Good that you're able to look at the screen. I'll pause here to see your responses. Vineet asked all of you, do you think this can go into open book assessment or not? Curious to hear your yes or no. Just share your view. Okay. No, everyone is no. And if you can say why no, I'm very curious. Because at the heart of open book exam, if you ask me one thing which will make open book exam successful in your school, and I work with a lot of schools where they are trying to pilot open book exam. We are looking at questions, we are co-creating some questions together. I know at the heart of this for successful, while there are other parameters, but in most of our schools, at least the audience I am referring to or talking to, other factors may not be the most important things like equity. Like Vineet has access to internet, but Prakhar has no access to internet. I think our children fortunately do not fall in that category, although a large part of the country may fall in that category. Okay, somebody is saying it's a memory based question. It's not making them think deeply, okay, after reading the content, but just copying the answer. Okay, any more responses around this? No, they have to learn to some memory base. Okay, let me start with one caveat, and I think we say this in most of the webinars. EI has been talking about this for 24 years. Memory is not bad. Memory is important. Rote memorization is a problem. Rote memorization is a problem. The difference between, in fact, we cannot sustain memorization without memorization. Somebody saying no analysis, synthesis, application. Yeah. So rote memorization is a problem. Memorization is a good thing. For example, I went to an ICSE school. I often cite this example. I, for some reason, remember height of Mount Everest. And without seeing your faces, without knowing where my audience is right now is coming from, I can guarantee a lot of you will be able to recall the height of Mount Everest. Any guesses? I'm sure a lot of you know the answer. And I don't know where you are coming from. I don't know which city. Yeah, some of you are writing it's 8,848 meters. Some memorization is important. In fact, you cannot sustain reading comprehension also without memorization. Rote memorization is a problem. So there are other questions when you look at. A lot of people think when you're talking about higher order thinking skills, it has to be necessarily difficult. It sometimes appears to be difficult because children have not mastered that competency. Like if I am in class 1 and you would have dealt this or maybe lower than class 1 these days, right? Prakhar, what is your address? I'll say, hi, my name is Prakhar, my mother's name is this, I stay in this address. The same content can have a change of competency. If right now I get a call from Amazon and he's saying, I am standing behind this temple and this is new pin code. Vis-a-vis my uncle, let's say, who somebody stays in America and he's trying to send me a courier. In all three situations, the content is same. So content is important. The context changing. And somebody has to teach me. That's how people practice and do some things better. Be it articulation, teaching is a good example. That's why a lot of people outside teaching do not understand that knowing a concept is not equivalent to ability to teach something. People think, oh, class 5 teacher, what will a class 5 teacher do? I can do all class 5 questions. It doesn't work like that. So content is your playing ground. Your ability to articulate, your ability to find relationship, your ability to what you often called Bloom's taxonomy or depth of knowledge may change. So first thing, do not start, and I'm saying this because I talk to a lot of schools, I see this, we assume, oh, it has to be a case study necessarily. Case studies have potential. But I've seen some very poor case studies which look like, which is wearing the dress of a good question, but they are not. So this may be relevant for your open book exam, may not be open book exam, depending on certain things which you need to answer. Like, what is your learning outcome? Which class are you testing this? Obviously, if I want to test this in class 10, or I'm testing this in class 5, what is the grade appropriateness is what I'm talking about. What is the larger objective, or what you call, is this an essential concept? For example, in an assessment, which is a national assessment like ASSET, we do not test questions on Roman numerals. Forget whether this question is good or bad, because we are saying, hey, this is not an essential concept. And you should start seeing your questions as a currency, because you have limitation in terms of asking questions, right? You cannot ask 500 questions or 20. See this as spending of currency. Now, if you're spending a currency, is Roman numeral the most important thing to be checked in class 5? We strongly believe, and I think a lot of you will agree to this, no. I'll again pause here. There are few other things in class 5. Can you give me one other topic in class 5 mathematics which you think is, Prakhar, you should know this in class 5? It's a make or break situation. I'll pause here for you to give me some responses. Fractions. Thank you for saying it. Without fractions, I will eventually stumble with decimals, percentage, ratio, proportion, everything. So don't worry about how the question looks like. Obviously, in class 5, this can still be coming in an open book exam. But I will refuse to put this in an open book exam because that's not my testing objective. That's not my larger objective for other reasons. But this is fun thing. Going forward, thanks to news, thanks to a lot of media, this is what open book exam visual looks like to all of us. In fact, interestingly, we take it so literally. One of the most asked question which I come across is, can you tell me which textbooks can children take? Can you tell me which reference? Can you give me a list? And that's important. That's why we are interacting today, sharing thoughts, because we need to understand it's not about the literal translation of the idea of open book exam. Please understand, and we are trying to do this together. Why are we doing open book assessment? The idea is not that you should carry NCERT book or dictionary or a calculator. Open book exam can be done in different ways. It can be a debate where children, your MUNs are good open book assessments, if you ask me. Children prepare, they have reading materials in front of them, they're told what is being, they understand what the person next to them is talking about, they have a context, they prepare, then they speak. Your Viva voice can also be an open book exam. Your debates are an open book exam. I think somebody wrote in the chat box that question which Vineet was showing, or the safe kitchen. I'll read the comment verbatim. Hey, this looks like a science lab activity. Your projects are a good open book exam. So don't get confused about the literal idea of children sitting, which is one way of open book assessment. But get the idea of why we are trying to do this. Because we understand today life is an open book exam. If I get asked by all of you some question, I may not answer. I will come back. Hey, ma'am, can I come back to you tomorrow and answer this? Or this is something which I said, which I don't agree to what I said. Can I correct it? These are the skills which we want children to learn. And that's why the kind of questions we ask is important and an integral part of it. And that's why open book assessment is not what you think. That's one way of doing it. So it's not about one question paper and now there is a book. By the way, your pedagogy has to change if you want open book assessments to work successfully in a school. You have to teach children how to work towards open book assessment. It's not that you give a question, I'll open book exam and they'll say, hey, my teacher has not taught. The purpose is not to trick children, right? The purpose is to help them prepare for tomorrow. That's what NEP is doing. That's what your schools are doing, trying to do. That's what NCF is trying to push. It's saying technology is changing every time. I have ChatGPT, I have Gemini, I have Perplexity, all on my fingertips. In this, can I read something and still assimilate information? How do I develop these skills? Because children will have access to a lot of information in today's time. How do I solve for this? So this is the most important critical part and the caveat which I want to start with. I think we are on the same page. I'll still, if you ask me what are the few salient features of open book assessment, it has to focus on understanding the meaning behind knowledge. I'm sure all of you have heard about university like Nalanda University or Takshila University in ancient India. One good thing it started doing, and lot of early Indian traditions also started doing is, or Buddhist traditions started doing, it's saying vis-a-vis prakhar chanting hymns or mantras. Can I open library? Can I ask people to look at discourses that not only do you remember formula of Pythagoras or a shlok in Hindi or Sanskrit or whatever, also understand what is the meaning of it. And this is already happening, right? The idea is to make it strong. And if you go to a Hindi class and teacher teaching at Kabir ke dohe, the idea is not how many doha I can recite, or the idea is not how many sonnets I can recite. Can I understand the meaning of it? And this will change, and that's the idea of cognitive domain. Whether you talk about Bloom's taxonomy or whether you talk about depth of knowledge, I can read Alice in Wonderland in class 5, appreciate it. I can read Alice in Wonderland in class 10th. I can do PhD. My questions can be different, and in all the three cases, I can have the open book through the looking glass in front of me. My ability to analyze, read something, quote something. If you say, Prakhar, if you are saying this, what is the source of this? It's my ability to come back and send you right sources and say things like, hey, while there are some researches, but I think this is a weak research. That's what we are trying to prepare children. Not only knowledge over rote memorization or meaning of knowledge, am I able to apply this? That's another salient feature of open book assessment. Okay, while there is text, and I forget the book, there will be ChatGPT, Gemini, and Perplexity and what not in their hands. Can I decipher all of that? Can I identify maybe this is something which is biased? Maybe something which I can challenge irrespective of the source. Can I get a WhatsApp message of Battle of Haldighati and say, I think this is skewed towards something? My ability to build on these higher order skills. So open book exam, it's not only about evaluation or testing. It's also about, in this journey, can you help your students prepare for this open book world? For example, if you ask me one thing which should be taught in all schools, your children take notes. It's a life-changing skill. You should teach your children how to take notes. Taking notes doesn't mean that if Vineet sir is teaching me, Prakhar as a student is just taking notes and writing everything verbatim. That can be one good quality. I think we all remember our school days, right? Where that teacher was just writing something on the board and we are frantically copying the mathematics formula on the left to right and just copying everything. That may be one minuscule part. Can I write my notes, arrange my notes, go back, relook at those notes in certain way and maybe create the second version? That needs to be taught. Otherwise, open book examination assessment is not an activity. It will not work if we say, oh, let's leave all this theory and understanding. You tell me the date and tell me which book to carry. Give me the question paper. It is very powerful, very close to my heart because I think it has huge potential to change how children learn, because that's very close to real world. I think one of you said that we want to test higher order skills like synthesis, articulation, critical thinking. If I've learned fraction, if I know how to look at improper fraction, and again, reiterating, if you get a question like 1/3 plus 4/5 is equal to dash, I'm not saying you should use this in open book assessment. This is important procedural skill. It may be used in your other exam as long as we're not only testing this. And that's the idea of cognitive domain. It should not happen that tomorrow, let's say Prakhar is cooking and I was making something for 2 guests. And now I get a phone call that there are 5 guests. I'll say, oh, I do not know how much salt to put. I don't know how much vegetables. I saw the recipe which had for only 2 people. I can't cook. I should be able to apply my fractions and ratio and proportion here also. Very important salient feature, include case studies. A lot of people confuse this idea, case studies, and I'm not saying make it look like a case study. The larger part of case studies, you would have heard that some universities like Harvard, so Harvard Business School, one of the best known business school, at least, is known for the case study method of teaching. You will see some medical college experimenting with open book exams with the real-time diagnostic of the patient. Idea of case study is not some text and question. Idea of case studies is that you have learned something in class, which is the most important part. Concepts are important. Can you apply it in real world case studies? So avoid making your own case studies. Whatever you are teaching in class, 99% it should be happening around the world. If it's not, then we should look back and see what are we even teaching. And data analysis again is an important. And data analysis, it's not only about number, it's about reading a graph, it's about reading a map, and it's comprehension. It can be part of English also, math also. Reiterating this because this is very important. Teaching children strategies. You need to teach children how to prepare for open book exam. So while as educators you are preparing for open exam, one good idea is write down few strategies. I'll speak about a few which you will teach children. You would have realized whenever, be it an asset or if you have come across PISA or TIMSS or PEARLS, which happens in class 4 in reading, children are not able to answer questions like identify the main idea of the text or infer. You have to teach them how to infer. You have to teach children how to look at a poster and relocate information in the text. And that's why your job is extremely difficult, right? Teacher's role is extremely difficult. You have to teach them. Otherwise, these can be fancy words. Oh, you can skim and read, and reading is not a natural process. One has to teach. That's why one of the most struggling skills, not in India, across the world, is reading comprehension. And I think the easiest scapegoat, math teachers will also come back and say, oh, math to aati hai. Prakhar knows math. It's the problem with the word problem because Prakhar can't read. Somebody has to teach. Somebody has to teach children how to ignore irrelevant information in a question. How to understand what is the question asking. How to understand what is the algorithm and the process of the question. Children needs to be taught what needs to be written when the question is of 2 marks or 5 marks, or when the question is saying describe and saying give me complete analysis. While we often assume that children will be able to understand and comprehend things like differentiation, elucidation, evaluation, it doesn't work like that. You have to teach them, and you have to then teach them in context. While you are teaching them and building this muscle memory, because the brain gets wired for it, then your open book exam will be successful. You will be ready. You have to prepare. Preparing is not getting the classroom ready and getting the question paper and finalizing the date. Otherwise, open book assessments will be another fad. We'll again struggle, but it's a good idea. Like some of you also said, without good quality question paper exams, open book exam, or any exam for that matter, will not yield any result. It's not the design of it. It's the sorry, it's not the external design of it. It's at the core internal design element of open book exam. Without OBA, without the good questions, OBAs or open book assessment will not be successful. This is not new. So 1950, 1970s, lot of countries experimented with it. Open book exams, they realized children were performing better in conceptual tasks and felt less stress. While I'm saying this, I will also tell you the research on the stress and assessment is pretty low. Currently, it's not one of the strongest research. What people have found out, it's not about the exam increasing the test. It's the kind of preparation, it's the kind of exam, and it is the perception and support mechanism which increases the test. While the early data showed, and I think it's very intuitive also. Vineet and Prakhar are two students, want to reduce the stress of Vineet, give him basic math and Prakhar standard math. Because this is the most obvious thing, but doesn't always work like that. In fact, this can also go back and people can falter because Vineet may start believing that, hey, I'm not ready for this kind of math. I am not good in math because you have created the system. And I'm not talking about somebody who's gifted. And I know this is very counterintuitive, very difficult to believe, especially for teachers, because they always see so many children like Vineet and Prakhar, where Vineet is acing in my class and Prakhar is struggling. But we don't realize there are other factors where Prakhar has not reached to the point. And that's why open book assessments can be like projects also, because you look at the masteries. In fact, Hong Kong started it, open book assessment in 1953. Although it was not never well documented and they piloted it into smaller pieces, they continue to still do it, but they were not doing it at a large pace. And I think 2000, 2010, when people started out talking about 21st century skills at the 4Cs and things like that, sustainable goals, lot of education systems started. And that's where CBSE, if you remember, I'm sure all of you will have some memory of it. Sorry, my throat is really coarse today. Have tried for class 9th and 11th, 2014. Denmark tried where they said, we will allow internet access to everyone and we will give you a test. It did not succeed in Denmark, which is at that time 2014 because of other factors, majorly because of access to resources and internet and things like it may work today. IB, which is International Baccalaureate, also is piloting for a few years the exams. It's not necessarily an open book exam, but what they are saying, we will give you some reference material. And reference material can be like when I was in school, now I think CBSE has for some reason removed it. We used to carry logarithmic tables. So it's basically saying, hey, you don't have to recall this part. This can be arranged. Why don't you spend your energy and show me your capacity and mastery in problem solving, critical thinking, understanding of a concept. I can give you a scientific calculator to do this. I can let you take calculator in class. Again, let's not get into this idea and confusion. Oh, but calculation is also important. But in your exam, you as an educator are very sure, today I want to test this part and not calculation. Calculation is very important. That's why I spoke about procedural fluency. That's why if you want to test that, you can test that on some other day. But today I want to see whether Prakhar is able to understand this problem statement needs application of highest common factor. and not necessarily Prakhar's ability to do multiplication or long form multiplication. COVID-19 was an interesting inflection point, and a lot of people moved to open book exam. And I think because it was forced and there were a lot of lack of readiness, a lot of our schools also ricocheted back. But I think this will again change, and the world is open book. The idea is not to do it because CBSE is saying it, but the idea is to prepare your children on the skills of the open book assessments. You will broadly see a restrictive type of open book exam where students are permitted to bring exam in the examination one or more specific documents. You have to specify. Students can consult printed documents, logarithmic tables, dictionary, complete works of Shakespeare, no handwritten material. This is a restricted type. This is one type of open book exam. You can have some appendices as part of the question paper. Like in some of the asset question, we define, describe, and explain what the phenomena is. Then give them a scenario and ask them to apply it. They do not present any special problem irrespective of the nature or course. So it will basically be higher order, but in the same context. Or this can be unrestricted type. You are free to bring whatever you want. You can bring your own notes. And this is something which needs preparation. It's not a quiz. The idea is not to flummox children tomorrow and say, hey, let's see how do I confuse you more. He'll say, hey, this is what is important. That's why, okay, another important caveat here is important part of testing is the clear learning outcome. The smarter and smoother and more effective learning outcome you are able to write and send to your parents, the better. And it will take some time. Parents will initially create a lot of confusion. They'll know, I don't know what will be tested. What will you test me on? So how to solve for this? Give them very clear. I want to test if students in my class are able to do dash. That give 1-2 example so that people can prepare and then ask them to bring whatever material. Use of such examination presume certain teaching strategies and types of question. You have to expose them to certain ideas, teach them. Broadly, this can be restricted and unrestricted type, which means your open book exam can also be as a homework. Again, these are low stake. And a lot of us assume that children will cheat and we'll make it easy for everyone. That's not true. It depends on the question also. So somebody said how to prepare question. While we do a separate 2-day workshop with schools on how to create questions, that's another thing. Broadly, if you ask me, I'll say use case studies and scenario that require children to apply critical thinking skills, which means pick up real case studies. I'll show you some today where children are able to apply. Create clear and unambiguous questions. Okay, please understand, and this is an important point, question making is, while it's a creative process, we also say it's not less of an art, but more of science. It's not a creative contest for a teacher. It's your tool to help children better. How do I help children better? Because I will be able to know how is my class mastering certain concept. Because I, as an expert in this subject, expert in pedagogy, and as an adult, knows that this today is critical for my children. So I am extending a helping hand. So the better questions I make, the better feedback I can give. The better feedback I can give, the better children will be able to improve on it. So there's a cycle to it. So idea is not to say, is bar aisa question banate hain, nobody will be able to. Let's make children struggle with the question. So it's not a creative contest, creativity contest for teachers. We make questions which ask children to apply, make use of information in their textbook notes rather than simply requiring load. That's why I'm saying I started with this idea because I've seen this happening. I've done sample studies of open book exams, seen pilots. It's not that now there is a book and it's not a game. It's a good form of assessment where we're trying to help children build. So it is not what happens inside in that room. Even 6 months before what's happening before that exam is part of open book exam. So it's not saying I'll ask question, now you can find somebody. It's not a treasure hunt for children. So lot of one school I saw, they made one question and the math textbook, which was part of the reference material, they had the same question solved. Only the numbers change. Then we are not solving. Ask yourself after you make each question, is this question, what is the testing objective of this question? What will I get as a teacher, which I can return to my students as a feedback? If the answer is not clear, ask your friends and colleagues, remove that question. And that's why I start with the idea of learning outcomes in mind. What skills and knowledge are you assessing? And I'm repeating this because it's so critical, maybe for the third time. The better learning outcomes you write, better is your ability to do open book exam or open book assessments. The better testing objective you have, the better are your chances to make a good question. You, as a teacher, your pedagogy has to change. You have to understand, you have to teach children how to learn. It's a skill. You have to teach children how to think. And there are multiple prongs to it. For example, I, as an educator, can identify misconceptions in children, give them questions which are structured in a staggering way. So ask them to reveal evidence. So, but this has to be taught. So open book exam is not what happens from 9 to 11 in some school, in some room, because CBSE says it, because IB wants it, ICSE wants it. It can be very powerful change in how pedagogy is approached. But if I'm a student, what would I like to do? I should be encouraged to take notes, tab material, use summary for help them write good notes. Ask them to summarize. Students should practice interpreting question. One class, stick only to question, teach children 10 questions, and this will change how children respond, by the way. How to interpret, ask them to forget question. Ask them to clearly share what is this question asking. Ask them to give you a roadmap of how they are thinking about answering this question. Teach during exam strategies. One is the strategy which happens before exam, one is strategy during the exam. I should be able to do time boxing. This question will know 15 minutes. That's why I hear this for forever. I've been hearing this, right? Children made this mistake, they got stuck with this question which was difficult and they did not know and they could not complete the paper. I've been hearing this, facing this when I was a kid. I hear this now. I'm sure people before me were doing this mistake. Children were struggling with this. The problem is, when will we start teaching? Somebody has to teach. And as all of you as expert teachers know, teaching is not telling. So right now I'm sharing information. This is not teaching. I'm not teaching you. I'm sharing information. You are adult, and andragogy is anyway different from pedagogy, how children learn. But somebody has to teach. Do post-exam reflection. I know schools who do this excellently well. Ask them to look at feedback. Another very powerful, when we talk about metacognition of how you are thinking, please show children some good examples of writing. If you say this essay gets 9 out of 10, show them, spend some time on helping them understand why is this 9 out of 10. And see, don't say read this at home, this is 9 out of 10. Please help them understand why is this 9 out of 10. If children do this, they will eventually be able to do well in open book assessments. And like I said, open book assessment or open book exams are close to my heart because life is open book assessment. There is no dearth of information. You can give me the fanciest, most esoteric word, I can go and Google it. Doesn't necessarily mean I will be able to understand it. Doesn't necessarily mean that I'll be able to understand whether I want to go back and search for this or not, because I have limited time. I'll pause here for 30 seconds, 40 seconds and ask you one question. Do you think multiple choice questions or open book exam, children will cheat and suddenly everything will become easy? Give me a yes or no. Yeah, I hear a lot of yes. Not so easy. So if you're interested, we have another 10 minutes. I'll show you some sample questions from different parts of the world. Feel free to use Google and try and solve this. Don't use ChatGPT. I can give you different set of questions for ChatGPT also for that matter. But use Google. So don't consult on your memory and just appreciate if children were doing this in open book exam with your current textbook in their hand, how will they realize and feel about it? This is a question from Cambridge Assessment, Ministry of Education, Singapore. I'll pause here for, feel free to Google it. Just don't use ChatGPT. Yeah, chat is disabled for this webinar. You can use Q&A. Yeah. Feel free to Google. You don't have to remember what you have to memorize. But see if you're able to appreciate a good question and say, hey, this can be a good open book exam question. And is it testing application? Remember, I gave you a framework. Is it grade appropriate? Imagine I'm testing this for class 10, then you can ask questions which are. And don't worry about the right answer. I'm not looking for your right answer here. But share what do you think this question of physics will do. This is coming from a Cambridge assessment. You can use Q&A to type your message. Yes, this is testing center of gravity. Is this question testing an application? Is this question very straightforward? The power of this, if you don't understand this, you cannot answer this. And this is a good example of open book exam. I'll pause here for maybe 2 minutes. I know this is a lot of text, but this is for an exam called PIRLS. It's called PEARLS. Just like you have come across PISA, which happened for 15-year-old student, PEARLS happens for class 4. It's the same company, which organization which does TIMS. It happens across the world. Just try and read this question. This is class 4. And I'll show you what the questions look like. Now let's look at the kind of question they're asking. What is the main message the leaflet gave you about thinking? If you have these kind of questions, then you will not come back and say, oh, but which book can I carry? Which reference material? You can carry a dictionary if you want, if you find anything difficult. But if a teacher has not taught this skill, children will struggle. And this is how life is, right? I'm walking, I suddenly go to, let's say, Canada for the first time in life, or I go to Kanchipuram for the first time in life. I go to a museum, I come across this on a trail. This can be put on the government notice board and anything, right? This is a real-time data, by the way. And I will have to make meaning. Imagine this question. And there are different cognitive domains. Or it can be this. I'm sure we'll agree to this idea that we can't go and memorize these questions, right? You carry whatever book you want to carry. Because remember, a lot of people, know this is very obvious. You will say, Prakhar, why are you repeating yourself? But I've heard this so many times. Don't get into that framework idea, but which book should I ask children to carry? That's not the point. Focus on how can I ask good questions? What am I testing? What's my learning outcome? Give books as reference material where you think otherwise they will spend a lot of unnecessary energy on cramming things. This is a question from ACIT, Social Science, class 7. You can answer this if you want. Very simple and clear. Yes, Niharika ma'am, recording will this session will be available. You can go to ei.study, and I think by Monday afternoon this will be available there. Shweta ma'am, yes, it's not, none of these are easy. And now these questions are easy or difficult depending on whether you know the concept or not. For somebody who knows what is a peninsula, you'll say, oh, this is something, what kind of questions are you asking in ASCET? And it is okay. That's why I'm saying carry your geography book, read what is peninsula, understand what the textbook is saying, then try and answer this. So even if you did not understand and read it well when I was teaching Prakhar, can you now go and read, and this ability and muscle memory has to be built, and then answer this. If you think fractions is easy and this is class 9. Without concept clarity, otherwise a fraction in class 9, who will ask? Largely, while the context is fraction, the larger point is number sense. And please understand, all of this is abstract for a child. That's why teaching is extremely difficult. That's why, because our minds are not tuned to this, your mind has to be trained to this. It's abstract. It's something you're not born with the idea of solving fractions. So basically, children should be able to see this 1 point something. By the way, this ASCET question class 9 was asked to 14,658 students, out of which barely touching 1/3, barely just topping 1/3, 33% of the people out of 14,658 students, which is a large number, could understand. But yeah, that's why it's a good, I can give you class 9 all fractions. You can carry your class 5, 6, 7, 8 if you don't understand this concept. But the idea is, I'll give you calculator, I'll give you things. Even if you start taking a calculator and dividing this, you will start seeing and make a sense of numbers, saying, hey, this is another way. I never saw that 1129 divided by 1125 is also is a mixed fraction or 1 point something. That's the idea. That's why open book assessments can be extremely powerful. Why only the textbook as the reference material? Give them a battery, give them a bulb, ask them this question, which is an ASCET class 7 question. Not even 1/3 of the students were able to answer this. Don't help. I'm saying idea is not to carry textbook. Forget textbook. Give them a battery. Let them try. It will always stick with them. Yeah. I hope this made some sense for all of you. I'll pause here and share my screen and share it back. I hope I was able to articulate how I look at open book assessments while we were finding this challenging. What do I say about something? Because while there's sparse information, there were a lot of terms around it, which you can read. You can read NCF, you can read CBSE guidelines and things like that, documents. We thought one idea is to explore some of these together. I hope this made some sense. Once again, thank you for attending. I will share my screen for the registration link. Vineet, if you can also share the registration feedback link in the chat box with everyone. Or Faz, if you are there, you can do it. I'll request all of you to 2 minutes to give us feedback. It will not only help us understand and improve, it will also help us send you the certificates. I think that's another important thing. Yeah. Seema ma'am is asking what is the difference between OTP conducted during CC and today. Uh, Depends on how you look at, but broadly OTB people were, again, it's like asking what is the difference between Aadhaar card today and some other document earlier. And depending on how you were used, both of will have their strengths and weaknesses. But OTB at that point of time were mostly two qualities. The marks were included in assessment. Open books, currently that's not the case. And also they were mostly activity based with CC. That's not necessarily the case with CC, but I think that's not the point. Whichever any school is doing well, I think it will have, because like I said, the idea is not to see which document, Aadhaar card or ration card is better. Which, however, whether you are doing OTB well in your school, that would make equally good value for children, and we can do poorly, we can conduct open book assessments poorly and still. So the name won't differ, but broadly the ideas were same. I think both done well have their own things. We'll be around for another 2 minutes for all of you to. You can copy paste, take the feedback form back home. Please don't forget to fill it. Sometimes we are not able to send certificates, and if we, because the feedback form has not been filled, if it's not filled, we'll not be able to send it because there's a separate team which does it. The system automatically generates and sends it across. Last 1 minute. If you have filled the form, feel free to leave. Thank you so much for joining. Another 1 minute and we'll close this window. You can go to www.ei.study. You can subscribe for the webinars. We also have a monthly newsletter, which has an interesting article, which has one question diagnosed based on students' data and decrypted and unfolded for all of you. We have something called research practices, so that you can read one research element in education every month. We have a principals interview section. You can come across somebody from across the country and maybe outside India sometimes, and hear their views about education. You can subscribe to the monthly newsletter. It's available on the ei.study, which I've shared. And in case you are curious, you want to write an article for us, you can write to me. You can reach out to me. My name is Prakhar Gildayal. I'll just. You can write to me. You can mention your interest of for writing an article on a newsletter. It reaches to more than 40,000 educators every month. We'll be happy to publish, co-create something with you. The last month was shared by a school head from Ludhiana. Do read that piece. She's talking about microcredits. It's a very interesting piece. Okay. We'll take your leave. Thank you, teachers. Thank you so much, Vineet. And happy weekend, everyone. Have a good day. We'll catch up in the next webinar. Bye.